Hello and welcome to Pre-Algebra Lesson 19. In this video, we're going to learn about adding integers. So the lesson objectives for today, we want to learn how to add integers using a number line. So this will give us a visual representation of what's going on, and it can be helpful if you're struggling with this topic. And then we're going to move on and learn how to add integers without a number line. So this is how we're going to solve our problems moving forward. Okay, so let's start out by talking about the scenario where we're going to use a number line. And basically, we'll start with the easier scenario where we're adding two or more integers with the same sign. So a positive plus a positive, which we already know how to do, or a negative plus another negative. So I have here that we would start at the left number that's on the number line. Then this plus here, this is basically for a positive number. If you have a positive number, it indicates a movement right. So for example, let's say I had 4 plus 5. We know that we could start out at 4 on the number line. And then because this is a positive number, I know that I'm going to move to the right. And in this case, I would move to the right by 5 units. And of course, we all know that 4 plus 5 is 9. Let's slide down here. And we see that this right here is for a negative number. And this indicates a movement left. So if I'm adding a negative number, basically I'm going to move to the left. So let's say I had something like 4 plus negative 5. Or actually, let's do negative 4 plus negative 5 to have the same sign here to make it a little bit easier. What's going to happen is I'm going to start out at negative 4 on the number line. And because I'm adding a negative number here, I'm going to move to the left by the absolute value of that number. So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. So I'm going to start at negative 4 and go 5 units to the left. And that's going to put me at negative 9. And we'll see this in a moment. So I have here, use the absolute value of the number being added to determine how far to move. Let's look at some examples. We want to add each on the number line. And this is not going to be bad at all. Once you do a few of these, it's really, really easy. Okay, so the first thing is when we look at the number line, remember 0 is not positive and it's not negative. So it is neither. If I look to the right of 0, those are the positive numbers. To the left of 0, those are the negative numbers. As we move to the right, remember numbers are increasing in value. And if we move to the left, numbers are decreasing in value. So it's really important to remember that. So let's start out with 4 plus 5 on the number line. Again, all I have to do is start out at 4. And I'm going to add 5. So again, this is a positive number that I'm adding. So I'm just moving to the right by, you could say the absolute value of that number there, but the absolute value of 5 is just 5. So I'm just moving to the right by 5 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So I end up at 9. So let me circle the starting and the ending. So we know that's 9. If I start with $4 and I make $5 today, well, now I have $9. So that's pretty simple. All right, the more challenging scenario occurs when you add two negative numbers. So thinking about negative 4 plus negative 5, well, we saw, let me put a little border here, that 4 plus 5 was equal to 9. Well, here with negative 4 plus negative 5, you would start at negative 4. So let me start here, and I'll just circle that. And I'm going to add a negative number. So that means I'm going to go to the left, okay? And I'm going to go to the left by the absolute value of that number. So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. So in other words, the sign here is telling me the direction. If it's positive, I'm going to the right. If it's negative, I'm going to the left. And then the absolute value of the number is telling me how far to move. So here I'm just moving 5 units to the left. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then finally 5 units to the left. I'm going to end up at negative 9 there. Okay. And we can do this in our head if you just think about it with money. Let's say that I owe $4 currently. I owe $4 to maybe the bank or something like that. And I go out and I accumulate another debt of $5. So let's say I go out with my credit card and I spend $5. Well, how much do I owe? Well, I can just add those two debts together. Negative 4 plus negative 5 would be negative 9. That's something you do in your head. You just say, okay, 4 plus 5 is 9. And then I'm attaching the common sign, which is negative, to show that I owe money, right? So I owe $9, or I could say it's negative 9 for the sum. Let's take a look at another one. Here we have a negative 2 plus negative 3. Before I do that, let me come over here and just do 2 plus 3. So again, you can see that there's a pattern emerging. So 2 plus 3 is what? That's 5. I could start at 2, and I could just go 1, and that color doesn't really show up. So let me change to orange here. So 1, 2, 3 units to the right, and I end up at 5. Okay, let me erase this and go back to negative 2 plus negative 3. So here I would start at negative 2. So let me put that there, and I'll circle this. I'm adding a negative 3. So again, if I'm adding a negative, the negative tells me I'm going to the left, and then by the absolute value of this number of units. So the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So I'm going to the left by 3 units. So 1, 2, 3 units, and I end up at negative 5. So this is negative 5. Again, notice you got 5 here and you got negative 5 here. So I can just add the absolute values here and attach the common sign. If I owe $2 and then I owe another $3, well, that's 2 plus 3 or $5 that I owe. So that can be represented with negative 5. So all you're going to end up doing is adding the absolute values of the numbers. So just pretending like they're positive and then just attaching the common sign. Here again, you just say, okay, what if they were positive? So 2 plus 3 would be 5 and then attach that common sign, which is negative. Okay, let's look at one with more than 2 integers. So now we have 3 integers, all the same sign. So it's not really any harder. You're going to have negative 1 plus negative 2 plus negative 5. So if I start at negative 1 and I add negative 2, I'm just going to the left by 2 units. So 1, 2 units to the left. So that's going to put me at negative 3. And then I add another negative 5. So I'm going to go 5 units to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to end up at negative 8 there. So I started at negative 1. I ended up at negative 8. So let me put negative 8 here. And again, you can think about this by just adding whole numbers. Let's say I had 1 plus 2 plus 5. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. Again, because all the signs here are negative, you would just attach that common sign. So I have a debt of $1 plus another debt of $2 plus another debt of $5. Let's say I owe Steve $1. I owe Chris $2 and I owe Mary $5. Well, how much do I owe in total? I can just add those guys together and I get a total debt of $8, which I can represent with negative 8. Okay, let's just do one more with the number line and then we'll move off of it. So we have negative 4 plus negative 3 plus negative 1. So let's start at negative 4. And then we're adding negative 3. So I'm going to the left, 1, 2, 3 units. So that puts me at negative 7. And then I'm adding negative 1. So I'm going 1 more unit to the left. So I started at negative 4 and I end up at negative 8. So this is negative 8. Once again, you could just add 4 plus 3 plus 1. So 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 plus 1 is 8. And you're just attaching the common sign. I owe $4. I have another debt of $3 and another debt of $1. How much do I owe in total? Well, I owe $8, which can be represented with negative 8. All right, so let's look at the rule, which I think is pretty easy at this point to understand. When adding 2 or more integers with the same sign, you add the absolute values and keep the common sign. So very, very simple. So I have here, let's try a few without the number line. We have negative 15 plus negative 11. So again, this is negative and this is negative. So just put a negative and then just pretend these two numbers are positive. What if I added 15 and 11? A lot of you can do that in your head. You know it's 26. But if you need to do a vertical addition, we can always stop and do that. 5 plus 1 is 6. 1 plus 1 is 2. So you just drag that up there and say this is negative 26. I owe $15 and then I go out and charge up another $11 on my credit card. How much do I owe in total? Well, I'm going to owe $26. So I can just say that's negative 26. What about this one? We have negative 7 plus negative 1 plus negative 3. Again, this is negative, and this is negative. So the answer is negative. Just use the common sign. Then just pretend like the numbers were positive. What if I added 7 plus 1 plus 3? 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. So just put that here behind that common sign. So this becomes negative 11 as the answer. Let's do another one. So here we have negative 5 plus negative 1 plus negative 6 plus negative 14. So every sign here is negative. So the answer is negative. And then just add the absolute values. So 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. And then 12 plus 14, I think a lot of you know that's 26. You can do it in your head, but let's just do it off to the side just so nobody's lost. 2 plus 4 is 6. 1 plus 1 is 2. So you're just going to bring that over here and say that the answer is negative 26. All right, so now let's move on and talk about the more complicated scenario. So this is where we're going to add 2 integers with different signs, or sometimes you'll add more than 2 integers. So you'll have many integers that you're trying to add and the signs are mixed. So what happens when we have mixed signs? Let's revisit our number line and try a few problems. Now, before we do this type of problem gives students the most trouble. When you look at, let's say, negative 8 plus negative 4, again, this is just an addition problem. We just saw this. Basically, you use the common sign is negative, and then you're just adding, right? You're just saying, well, what is 8 plus 4? That's 12, and then you're just attaching that sign. So this is negative 12, so that's really easy. I'm just going to tell you before we start this procedure is just as easy. You're now just doing a subtraction problem, okay? So think about negative 8 plus 4 first on the number line. So here's negative 8. And then I'm adding 4. So that means I'm going 4 units to the right. So I'm just going to go from right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the right. So that puts me at negative 4. Does that make sense? I always tell people to use money in your head if you're trying to think about this. Let's say I have a bank account and currently I owe them $8. I go into the bank and I give them $4. Do I still owe money? Yes, I still owe $4. So it makes sense that this is -4 here. Again, I have not given them enough money to get back to zero or to get back to where I don't owe any money. So basically you could think about always that if I have a negative here, let's say it's -8, that I have to add the opposite of that number. So let's say in this particular case, that's going to be +8 to get back to zero. And we could think about that problem. Let me erase this. So if I have -8, which is 8 units away from zero on the number line, remember the absolute value of -8 is 8, I would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units to the right to get back to zero. So I have to add the opposite of the number to get to zero. Now, if I start adding numbers that are greater than 8, what's going to happen is now I'm going to have a positive balance in my account. Let's say I do -8 plus 9. Well, I'm going to go one more unit to the right on this number line, and I'm going to end up at 1 now. So now I have $1 in my account because I paid more money than I owed. So hopefully that does make sense. You can pause the video and really start to think about what's going on here. But essentially, this is going to translate into a nice little procedure for us. All we really have to do is first think about which number is bigger in terms of its absolute value. So which number has the bigger distance away from zero on the number line. Let me get rid of this and go back to this as the original problem. Well, in this case, the -8 does, right? It's 8 units away from zero on the number line. 4 is 4 units away from zero on the number line. So this guy is going to be the winner in terms of our sign. So you use the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. Then I'm just going to put this in parentheses for right now. You think about these two numbers as if they were positive numbers, and you just subtract the larger minus the smaller. That's all you have to do. So it just becomes 8 minus 4. So 8 minus 4. And so this becomes the negative of 8 minus 4 is 4. So this is -4. Let's say you change this around. And now you have 8 plus, let's say, -4. Well, this is going to be a positive result. You could put a plus out here if you want, or you can leave it off. It's up to you. And then you're just going to subtract the absolute values. So what is 8 minus 4? So 8 minus 4, well, that's going to be 4. And that should make sense in this particular case. If I had 8, let me get rid of this problem right here. If I had $8 in my account, so let's start here, and I spend 4, or I have a debt of 4, let's say I charge up 4 on my credit card, well, basically when I settle up, I'm going to have $4. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the left, and I'm going to end up at 4. So we'll see later on that 8 plus -4 can be directly written as 8 minus 4. You can immediately go to that. So if I had something like, let's say 10 plus -5, I'll immediately just write that as 10 minus 5. So this is a very easy problem to do a conversion with. If you have something like, let's say -10 plus 5, well, this one's a little bit more tricky because the negative has the larger absolute value. So in this case, I just say, okay, well, I'm going to use the negative, and now I'm going to convert this into 10 minus 5 in my head. 10 minus 5 is 5, so this gives me -5. Okay, let's look at a few more. So here we have a 9 plus -7. So let's start out at 9 on the number line, and I'm adding -7. So I've incurred a debt of $7, or let's say someone took $7 away from me for a product that I bought, something like that. So I'm just going to move to the left by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units. So I end up at 2. So basically, you could have written this as 9 minus 7, which equals 2. Again, the larger absolute value here is 9. 9 is 9 units away from zero on the number line, and -7 is 7 units away from zero on the number line. So basically, I'm not taking away enough to get me to 0 or some negative value. So the answer is going to be positive. Right? And then you could just subtract the absolute values. 9 minus 7 is 2. If I change this around, let me put this a little bit tighter in there. If I change this around, and let's say I do -9 plus 7, well, now I owe $9, right? So I'm here at -9. I go into the bank and I give them 7. Now I still owe $2. So I've got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units to the right. And now I'm at -2. Right? So I started at -9 and I'm at -2. So I have not gotten out of the hole yet. So here you would say this is the negative of, and then you go 9 minus 7. So 9 minus 7. And let me make that 7 a little bit better. So this becomes -2. Okay, let's look at one more of these and then we'll just run through a bunch of examples. So we have -7 plus 12. So start out at -7 and I'm going to add 12. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I end up at 5. So here's negative 7. Again, that should make sense. If I owe $7 and I pay $7 off, I'm going to be at 0. But now I didn't just pay $7 off, I paid $12 into my account. So I should have $5 more left in my account. So this really becomes a subtraction problem. It becomes 12 minus 7, which is 5. Again, if this number is larger in terms of absolute value, you could just flip it around and turn it into a subtraction problem. You could really just say, okay, well, this is going to be 12 plus negative 7, which becomes 12 minus 7, which equals 5. This is something you're going to do mentally very, very shortly after you start working enough problems. If you started with something like negative 12 plus 7, well, then in this case, I owe $12, but I'm only paying off 7. So it makes sense that I should still be in the hole, right? Or have a negative account balance. So this will be negative. And then I'm just going to say, okay, what is 12 minus 7? Just subtract the absolute values, the larger minus the smaller. 12 minus 7 is going to be 5. So this ends up giving me negative 5. All right, let's go through the procedure and then we'll just run through a bunch of problems. So when adding two numbers with different signs, use the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. Then think about the numbers in terms of their absolute values and subtract the smaller from the larger. So you're doing a subtraction problem, figure out what your sign is, and then just subtract the absolute values, larger minus smaller. That's all it is. Okay, so let's try a few without the number line. So here we have 13 plus negative 8. Again, you can easily convert that in your head into 13 minus 8. And the reason is simple. This guy is larger in terms of absolute value. I have $13. You could say I'm incurring a debt of $8. Whatever it is, I'm taking 8 away from what I have. So 13 minus 8 would just be 5. So the sign of the number with the larger absolute value is positive, and then you're subtracting the larger absolute value, which is 13, minus the smaller absolute value, which is 8. 13 minus 8 would give you 5. If you had negative 13 plus 8, well then the 8 that you're adding is not enough to cover the debt, right? You owe $13. So this guy will be negative. The larger absolute value is negative, so this sign will be negative, and then you're just doing what is 13 minus 8, which gives you now negative 5. So that's the difference between these two. I started with 13, which is a bigger number in terms of absolute value, and I added a debt of 8, or I subtracted away 8, however you want to think about that. Basically, I'm going to end up with $5 in my account. Here I owe $13, and I only pay off 8, so I'm going to have a negative here, and then I do 13 minus 8, I end up with a debt of $5. So that's the difference between these two. What about 12 plus negative 2? Again, the absolute value of 12 is bigger than the absolute value of negative 2, so this will be positive. And then you could just subtract the larger absolute value minus the smaller. So this turns into 12 minus 2, which is 10. If I had negative 12 plus 2, well, now this is going to be negative. I owe more than I'm putting back in. The absolute value of negative 12 is larger than the absolute value of 2. So this is going to be negative. And then you do the same subtraction. You're still going to do 12 minus 2. So this part's still 10, but I have that negative there. So this would be negative 10. What about 14 plus negative 23? So the absolute value of 14 is 14. The absolute value of negative 23 is 23. So we know this is negative, and then you're just going to do a subtraction. What is 23 minus 14? Let's borrow here and put a 1 there. 13 minus 4 is 9. 1 minus 1 is 0. So this is negative 9. And again, if you change this up and you said, well, I have a negative 14 plus 23. Well, now I owe $14 and I'm putting 23 in my account. So of course I expect to have a positive balance, right? So the sign of the number with the larger absolute value is positive. So the answer would be positive. And now you can just change this into 23 minus 14, which of course we know is 9. What about negative 31 plus 25? Well, here the sign of the number with the larger absolute value is negative. So we're going to use that sign. And then you're just going to subtract the absolute values, larger minus smaller. So 31 minus 25. Let's borrow here and put a 2. Maybe that 5 could look a little bit cleaner. And let's put this as an 11. 11 minus 5 is going to be 6. 2 minus 2 is 0. So this would be negative 6 here. And again, if you had changed that up and said you have $31 and you add a negative 25, so basically you spend 25 or you incur a debt of 25, however you want to think about that. Well, what's going to happen is I have enough money to cover that. So I know I'm going to have a positive balance in my account because the absolute value of this positive number is larger than the absolute value of this negative number. And then I just do my subtraction. So larger absolute value minus the smaller. What is 31 minus 25? We know that's 6. So here that would be 6. Okay, let's do some problems where it's mixed. So what I'm going to tell you is when you do mixed addition, The way I like to do it is I like to add the numbers with the same sign first. It just makes it easier. You can reorder this using the commutative property. You can always add in any order. So I'm just going to say that this is 12 plus 7 done first, and then plus negative 15. So we know 12 plus 7 is 19. We've been doing that forever. So this is 19, and then plus negative 15. And then, of course, here, 19 has the larger absolute value. So the answer will be positive, and then you're just doing a subtraction. So larger absolute value minus smaller. So what is 19 minus 15? Well, that's going to be 4. What about 5 plus negative 2 plus 1 plus negative 7 plus 11 plus negative 14? So let me put 5 plus 1 plus 11 next to each other, and then plus negative 2 plus negative 7 plus negative 14. I'll put those next to each other. And again, just add the numbers with the same sign first. So those guys, let me do this in a different color. And those guys, you'll do them separately. So what is 5 plus 1? That's 6. 6 plus 11 is 17. Again, you can always stop and do a vertical addition. 1 plus 6 is 7. Bring down the 1. So that's 17. So this right here would be plus. Now you have negative 2 plus negative 7 plus negative 14. So I know that's negative. And then just add 2 plus 7, that's 9. And then 9 plus 14. A lot of you know that that's going to be 23, but 4 plus 9 is 13. So put the 3 down, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is going to be 2. So this would be negative 23 here. So now, which number is larger in terms of its absolute value? Well, negative 23 is. So this would be a negative, and then you're just doing a subtraction. So what is 23 minus 17? A lot of you, again, know that's 6 already, but let's just do this over here so nobody is lost. Borrow here, and that 1 could be better. So this is 13 minus 7, which is 6. 1 minus 1 is 0. So this right here, you drag that up, and you would get negative 6 as the final answer. All right, let's take a look at one more of these. So here we have negative 3 plus negative 1 plus 8 plus negative 5 plus 9. So let's write negative 3 plus negative 1 plus negative 5 plus 8 plus 9. Okay, so negative plus negative plus negative here would give me a negative. And then just add the absolute values. So 3 plus 1 plus 5. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. So this is negative 9. And then plus, we know 8 plus 9 is 17. So now, if you think about this, this number is larger in terms of its absolute value. So our answer will be positive, and then you're just subtracting the larger absolute value minus the smaller. So you're just turning this around into what is 17 minus 9. And a good way to do this, I think, is to just reorder that and say this is 17 plus negative 9. When I see that immediately, I know that's 17 minus 9. And of course, that gives me a final answer of 8.